We are looking for just any ray of positivity, ray of sunshine when it comes to this Mariners team, and we bring in the only man that could possibly do it. The one, the only Jon Morosi's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. How are you, John?
I'm doing my best, my friends. I've been thinking about this conversation all day, flying from Houston back here to Michigan. We had the Yankees and Astros last night, and I said, what am I going to say to Bob and Dave to boost their spirits?
By the way, I got to say, I heard a bit of your conversation on the broadcast with those guys, and you were having a bit of a debate about the MVP.
Yeah.
Who was it in the booth? I didn't catch who it was.
Verducci.
Oh.
So basically, Tom and I have some different perspectives on this. I describe the MVP race right now still as a dead heat, that it's close. And Tom thinks it's clearly advantage Judge. And that's great. It's great to have different opinions on these things. But I look at it and say there is still enough schedule left where if the Mariners are able to close this out and secure a playoff berth, or who knows, maybe still make a run at the division, perhaps they can. Again, I do think the context there would still potentially favor Raleigh, but obviously Tom's opinion is that it's Judge's to lose at this point in time.
So what do you see as, look, teams struggle on the road. Obviously, you're in different parks. You're going to be in hitters' parks, pitchers' parks, what have you. Home is home, and you expect them not to be as good on the road. But this team has really struggled on the road, specifically here in the second half. I mean, it's been abysmal. Is that them trying too hard? I mean, the pitching has kind of gone south on the road for them, although I keep pointing this out, even though they lost that series against the Guardians, all three pitchers gave you a quality start to varying degrees, at least 6 innings and 3 runs or less from all three. Now, you lost 2 of those games anyway, but it felt like, okay, at least that part is starting to look right. And then Kirby goes out there and just lays a giant egg last night and gets his brains beaten in 2 innings. And you're going, all right, what is happening here?
I do think the pitching is a significant reason why they just don't pitch as well on the road as they do at home. Now that's not a revelatory fact. Obviously, we know that T-Mobile is a good place to pitch, but it almost seems to me, guys, that they're too dependent upon the comfortable environs at home to have that success. And for some reason, they just cannot find that same rhythm when they're away from Seattle. And that is going to have to change, or this October, if they even have one, is going to be a lot shorter than we expected, because you're going to have to win games and have big starts in adverse circumstances. And certainly they did it in Toronto 3 years ago, before, of course, the Houston series. But they're going to have to find a way this weekend, obviously in Atlanta. And sure enough, it seemed as though you lose some winnable games in Cleveland, then really you're overmatched in some odd ways this week against the Rays. And Caminero is like still rounding the bases right now. He's unbelievable. But then you now have to deal with the Braves, and sure enough, you game 1 you draw the recently returned from the IL Chris Sale, and then Waldrop in game 2, and he's having a really good season since coming up. So you got no breaks right now. They're going to have to earn this. There is no soft landing. There is no easy breezy conclusion to the season. By having this sort of awkward couple weeks, they've really cost themselves what could have been a much easier path to a playoff berth. Now it's a real race. I mean, this is there. Let's put it this way: I counted 4 teams now. 4 are closer to the Mariners in the wild card than the Mariners are to the Astros in the division.
Yep.
Ooh. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
That is a sobering fact, and that's just the reality of the standings right now. That is pretty alarming. And so, again, this is a team that feels like they need a reset in the worst way. The day off comes today, and I think it's interesting too. I know Ryan Divish has written about this a bit, about the amount that their key guys have played in terms of the number of innings they've played, the number of innings that Raleigh has caught, defensive innings for guys like Crawford. There's been a high toll for a lot of these guys, to where, and again, it's you're darned if you do, darned if you don't. It's almost too late to have a different approach now, but it feels as though there's been a lot of tread taken off these tires for these players during the course of the year, where they play a lot, and this is where maybe at the very end of the year, the long travel from Seattle starts to add up a little bit, all those miles. It's now late on in the year. I think if I'm Dan Wilson, again, easy for me to say, but I wouldn't be afraid to spot a kid into the lineup here, whether it's a Harry Ford here, bring in some more youth there, just a little more energy. Some guys that can, sometimes it's a different look, a little shake-up. You're not benching someone. You're just kind of refreshing the lineup a little bit and showing your team there's different ways to score some runs, because obviously situational hitting has been an issue with men in scoring position, has been a real problem for this team of late. And I think maybe sometimes getting a little bit of different personnel in there. You're not benching people, you're not going away from them, but you're taking a little bit of a different approach, which I think at this point of the year can sometimes be pretty healthy.
But other teams are going through this, right, JP? So what do you think, it's a depth issue, or do you think it's a Dan Wilson, decision issue as far as giving guys days off?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dave. I'll say this. I said this at the trade deadline after the deadline had passed, and so I'm going to stick with that statement. This is as deep of a position player group as they have had in the years that we've been having these conversations. They have as many good options right now as they've had in a while. And so I think that it's probably Dan's comfort level with the core group of guys. And again, when it works, it's great. But when it doesn't work, you're sitting there saying, should I have given a little more time off to this player or that player during the course of the journey to get more out of them now? And again, we're at a time of year where the weather starts to work in your favor a little bit. It's not quite as oppressively hot in a lot of places around the country. So some of that will help, but the days off are important. And so to answer your question, I think it's more the way that Dan Wilson wants to run his team as opposed to a lack of depth. I think this team has the depth. They have the personnel to rotate your group a little more often, and we'll see how they do this weekend. When you get for example, a tough lefty like Chris Sale, sometimes that leads to having a little bit of a different lineup where you're going to flip some of your righties into the game and see what they can do. And I think Friday night, Chris Sale in Atlanta might be the time to do it. Hey, you're facing a likely Hall of Famer. You don't have to do the same thing that you might always do. So I think this is actually the perfect occasion for Dan Wilson to put a little different looking lineup out there and see if maybe a change of scenery, change of approach could just transform the luck after a really, really tough few games. And obviously a difficult series in Cleveland as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we'll see Harry Ford in this series, because he's been called up, but all he's done is sit on the bench to this point, which makes me go, okay, well, you probably could have used another bullpen arm, or perhaps, what's the goal with him? I still don't see his path with this team. I don't know what it is, other than Garver will be gone after this season. Right. So does he become your primary backup, and then DH? I guess maybe. I don't know what his future is with this team, but as far as his immediate future, would you be reluctant? Well, you got 22 games left. You got every one of them means the world, as we've talked about. You talked about all you got to keep pace. So can you afford for a young rookie who's never seen a pitch at this level to cut his teeth? Do you look at it as, hey, there's nothing to lose, run him out there, maybe he gets hot? Or do you look at it and go, we can't give away at-bats, even though some guys are struggling? How do you view the use or lack thereof of Harry Ford?
I think you pick your spot and fire him in there when it's, again, the right matchup. He's a righty bat. It'd be a heck of a scene. I mean, let's take a minute here and pause on this. If they went down the path of having him in the lineup against Sale, which I think is, I'm not there yet, but I'm just thinking about it for a second.
Right.
If they did that, it's a righty against a lefty. So, and from that standpoint, maybe you get a little bit of a different look. And it'd be in Harry's hometown. He's from Georgia. It's his home ballpark, right, if you will. So it'd be quite a story. It'd be kind of a fun way to begin your major league career if you hop in there against a future Hall of Famer in the city where you grew up going to games. That's kind of cool, actually. So, hey, at this point, after watching those last 3 days, guys, I don't think anybody could say, well, there's that's a bad idea. I would take anything that'd be a little different look than what we had the last 3 days.
Everything's on the table, huh?
Everything's on the table, and I think sometimes one of the best things you can have is 3rd and long. Hey, throw the ball down the field a little bit and see what happens. I think that kind of a situation might actually be good. And I've covered the game long enough, guys, to see there have been times in September where a late season call up shows up and all of a sudden plays way better than you ever thought that they would. So that might be the story for Harry Ford. I'm kind of, as someone who loves stories and storytelling, I got to be honest, I'm now kind of rooting for Dan to put Harry Ford in the lineup tomorrow night against Chris Sale in his hometown.
Yeah, that would be storybook stuff there for him. Hey, right now it looks like the biggest threat for the third wild card spot is the Rangers, and they're without. Doesn't look like much longer, but they're without Seager and Garcia. But who's the biggest threat? I mean, the Mariners took care of Texas pretty handily, but and by the way, it seems like the guys that are chasing him, like Texas, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, they should be closer based on it. Just feels that way, I think, and that's just emotions taking over. But when you look at these other teams that below that number, as far as the third playoff spot, who do you think's the biggest threat there?
I do think it's Texas, even though they may have already had their best stretch. They actually just lost 2 games in a row, which obviously if one of those 2 had gone Texas's way, you'd be really it'd be a really nervous moment right now for the Seattle Mariners. But I think they've had so many injuries. Obviously, Nate Eovaldi is out for the year, but they still have DeGrom, and so there's enough there with the Rangers to where their bullpen's been pretty solid with Milner. He helps them out back there. I think they are going to be a threat down the stretch. Their schedule, though, is difficult. They've got a series against the Brewers next weekend. This is still the Mariners' spot to win or lose. The standings say it. I still believe that their talent right now, that the healthy team they've got on the field is better than any of the teams chasing them. Obviously, the Rays have jumped back into the race based on basically how they played against the Mariners this week. But I do think Texas is the greatest threat, but the greatest threat to the Mariners is the Mariners. They just have to play their best baseball. If they play their best baseball, they'll be fine. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about strength of schedule. It's way more important to just get your own personnel in order, help them be at their best in these late season games, because if you do that, and again, to your point earlier, it's an excellent point about Cleveland, about the series against Cleveland, and the Mariner rotation lined up pretty well there. It's still there. This is still a good pitching team when they're all in sync and going. And to be fair, the one thing the Mariners have, and certainly there have been some bullpen issues, and Munoz was part of it last weekend. Just about every team in the American League that is in contention has mild to serious bullpen concerns. I was on the radio 2 hours ago in Toronto, and they're in a bit of a panic. The Astros, there's no Josh Hader. Last night I saw the Yankees have a bullpen meltdown. I live in Detroit. They didn't think that the Tiger fans don't think that they did enough at the deadline. It's like everybody. I was joking earlier. I said like there should be a sponsor, a marketing sponsor for the American League playoffs, which is like the American League. No one go to sleep because the ninth inning is going to be interesting. It's that point right now. Everybody has flaws, and I think that for the Mariners, ironically, the flaws seem to be a little earlier in the game than later. Obviously, some of the games against Cleveland got away late, but the greater concern right now for the Mariners is not what you thought it would be. It is the rotation, and they're going to have to find a way, I think, to get things in a better tempo there. And some big starts coming up this weekend against an Atlanta team that is still competing. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they're still dangerous. And I think it's going to be a real tough test. It's an important off day today for the Mariners, but a real tough test coming up this weekend. And I think the bullpen's going to have to be sharp in another huge road series now against the Braves.
Hey, John, what's your level of concern with Luis Castillo? He's over his last 7 starts, an ERA of 7.3. And that includes one really good start he had against Tampa Bay early in August. But in the month of August, he had a 6.66 ERA. He's got 4 games in a row where he's been brutal. And like I said, through his last 7, he's got a 7.3 ERA. Whereas Kirby, dreadful start, maybe worst of his career, but he had 6 quality starts out of his previous 7 starts. So it's easier to sort of dismiss that one where we're looking at a guy who's older. Are we seeing age? Are we seeing wear and tear? What do you think we're seeing from Luis Castillo?
Yeah, it's a really important question, Bob. I share those concerns. You start to wonder, does he need an extra day? Do they need to skip him at some point to give him a little more rest and hope that maybe they can help him get sharp? Obviously, having an off day today gives them options for down the line in September if they might want to give people an extra day. But I'm with you. I think that the overall pitch execution for him has just not been what it was in the past. And he's had great stuff, obviously, during the course of his career. But since joining the Mariners, he hasn't necessarily been a guy that's living at 99, obviously 100 miles an hour. He's had to have better command and I think better secondary stuff to have success. And I just think it overall has not been there. And it's now getting late to where you start to wonder, will it get fixed in time? Certainly we're a long way away from having this conversation, but you start to wonder if you consider a playoff series roster at this juncture. I'm not sure how he's if it's a wild card series, how he's one of your 3 starters, and he may not even be one of your 4 starters if it's a division series scenario. So I think he, in a lot of ways, needs to pitch better to just stay a part of the October conversation and help them get there, of course. But I think that what your point is well taken, which is he may need, because of just the lack of sharpness, skip him, give him an extra day, however you can do it. But I think that this is a legitimate concern right now for the Mariners coaching staff.